Should you simplify your art? A couple weeks ago, I got to interview Laura Williams. And one of the things that Laura Williams told me when I was interviewing her was that she had an encounter with somebody from that happened to walk into her studio when she was doing a residency. And the thing that the person said to her was that it looked like what Laura was making, it looked like it took a long time. It looked like it was very complicated to make. And she asked the question, do you enjoy what you're making? And Laura responded, not really. It's kind of tedious and it's kind of long. It takes a while to make. And so with that, with Laura's response came the guest response as well. And she said, well, maybe you should simplify your work. Maybe you should take out a few steps and take out a few things to maybe, so you could price your work a little bit better and you could make pottery a little bit faster. And that becomes the question. Should you simplify your art? Well, it really comes down to what your goal is. What is your goal in pottery? What's your goal in art? Why did you get into pottery? Do you do it as a hobby? Do you do it trying to be a full-time potter? What is your goal? If your goal is to become a full-time potter, you might want to think about simplifying your work, because the goal is to sell the pots, right? The goal is to sell the pottery, sell things to make a living off your pottery. And if you price your work too high in the beginning, then you're not going to be able to sell anything at all. I learned that lesson myself. I tried pricing my mugs way too high, and I didn't sell anything. And so, but the reason why I priced it so high was because it took a long time for me to make. And that was pretty much the same conflict that Laura was facing, that it was like the stuff that she was making took her a long time, so she had to either price it very high, but either price very high and not sell very much, or lower the price and simplify it and sell more. And that was the decision Laura made. She decided to simplify her work. Instead of doing something that is very complicated, she decided to simplify it. But it comes back to what your goal is. Are you doing this as a hobby? If you're doing this as a hobby, you don't need to really simplify your work. As long as you're enjoying what you're making, that question, are you enjoying what you're making? If you answer yes on that, then you don't need to simplify your work. You don't need to do anything else, because that's what is going on in your mind. You don't need to do anything else. You're already doing it, right? Because if you are enjoying what you're making, then that is the number one thing. But if you ask yourself the question, are you enjoying what you're making? And the answer is no, then you know you need to simplify your work. You need to start simplifying your work, dumb it down a little bit. And by dumbing it down, I just mean taking out a few steps that you're doing into your pottery process or your art process as well. Dumb it down a little bit so that you can make the art faster, make the pottery faster, and price it a little bit better. Price it a little bit more affordable, right? So let's say you are making a mug and you add a bunch of sculptures to it. Is that taking you a very long time and you really want to sell this? And maybe you are somebody that's new to selling art, selling pottery? Try simplifying it down, because that process, it can be heartbreaking when you spend a lot of time on something and it just doesn't work, right? It doesn't sell because that's what you wanted it to do. You want it to sell. A simple solution is to simply simplify your art. Maybe only doing one to three colors, right? If you are somebody that uses a lot of colors, or maybe you're only adding a few. If you add sculptures to your mugs like me, maybe instead of doing the whole sculpture, maybe you're just adding the head, or maybe you're just adding the head and body. You're not doing the entire thing. You're not doing every single thing to make it more complicated. It's okay to simplify your work. It's okay. Just because you're simplifying your work doesn't mean it can't be just as good. Not only that, by simply putting limitations onto your own pottery and simplifying what you're doing, new ideas start to come about. Simply by putting limitations on yourself, you start thinking outside the box. Okay, how can I make this pot, make it the best pot possible with the limited resources I have, or with the limited steps I have to take to make this piece come to life? And simply by simplifying, it frees you up time to make the work and also price a little bit better. We don't always have to make the most complicated things. If we could simplify our work, learn to simplify it, take out some steps that you're doing in the process, then that becomes how you simplify the work. You don't always need to make something extravagant. And again, it comes back to your goals. If your goal is to become a full-time potter, if you want to sell your own art, your own pottery, you might want to think about simplifying your work. But if you're just doing this as a hobby, maybe doing this on the side every once in a while, it's okay to make more complicated work. So that's my advice to you if you're thinking about trying to simplify your work. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next.